when I was starting my software development career, I used to think that Markdown files are just for writing README.md files for my GitHub repository. And this was quite an outdated thinking, especially in the modern world where the AI agentic era is ruling everything. In this era of AI agents, Markdown is becoming one of the most important file formats in software development, and not because it is complicated. Actually, it is the quite opposite. Markdown matters because it is simple, it is readable, it is structured, editable, and easy for both humans and AI systems to understand. And when you start building with AI coding tools, AI agents, LangGraph, Cloud Code, Casa, OpenAI agents, or any workflow where AI need project context, you are even talking about OpenClaw. Markdown becomes more than the documentation, it becomes the context layer. Your memory, when you're using OpenClaw, is stored in form of Markdown files. Even for some of you who are operating with Obsidian, who are using Obsidian for your notes or for your second AI brain, all these files are stored in form of MD, Markdown. It becomes the place where you store project rules, architecture decisions, task instructions, coding standards, implementations plans, and even agent behavior. So in this video, I want to break down three things. First, that what Markdown actually is, and second, how Markdown syntax works, from the headings to the list to code blocks, and third, why Markdown files matter so much in the era of AI agentic development. Because here is the brutal truth: your AI agent is only as good as the context that you give it. And how do we create context for these agents? In what format do we have these files? That is where Markdown comes in, and Markdown is one of the cleanest ways to give the agent the context that it needs. All Markdown files usually end with a .md extension. For example, README.md, Notes.md, TASKS.md, AGENTS.md, ARCHITECTURE.md, CHANGELOG.md. That .md extension tells editors and platforms this file contains Markdown. So when GitHub sees a README.md file, what does it do? It automatically renders it beautifully on your repository page. This is why almost every serious open source project has a README.md. But here is where things are changing. Before AI agent, Markdown files were mostly used for humans. A README.md was for explaining the project to another developer. But now, Markdown files are also useful for AI agents because AI tools can read those same files and understand what is this project, how is it structured, what rules should I follow, what task should I complete, what should I avoid changing, what is the expected output. So, Markdown is no longer just for documentation. It is becoming a way to communicate with these AI systems. It's one of the best ways to give AI instructions and context. And now let us go through the basics of the Markdown syntax. Now, this is important because if you understand the syntax, you can create better documentation, better AI instructions, and better project context files, and better README files, all these files that you need to create with Markdown. Now, right here, I'm working with Obsidian. Well, I would like you to know that you can just do the same with the VS Code. For example, you can come and create a Markdown file in VS Code. It's still fine. You can still use Visual Studio to create these Markdown files. You can create these Markdown files with VI. You can create these Markdown files with basically any editor as long as you have the .md extension. And by default, all the files that you create with Obsidian are usually Markdown files. Now, if you don't really know what Obsidian is, well, no need to worry. I just want you to take note of the syntax. Obsidian is just a note tracking tool. It's the same as Notion, where you can keep your notes, track your notes, and just have your notes or your basic day-to-day activities recorded, the same as Notion. So Obsidian is nothing more than that. But I like Obsidian because of its flexibility and Another thing I like about Obsidian is the ability to write my notes and write my documents and my files in the Obsidian, in the Markdown format notation. Now, as you can see, I have quite some few files here, and I use Obsidian and I use a Markdown files notation every time I write these files in Markdown. And for example, when I just click on this, you can see I have 3 hashtags, but immediately I move my cursor, or I move my cursor to another line, you can see I get the format rendered immediately. So the reason I want to work with Obsidian right here is because it's going to give me the exact feedback loop whenever I need it, because I need you to see the immediate result. I want you to see the immediate result of what the different syntax are going to look like. So that's why I like Obsidian, because it gives you the immediate result, it gives you the immediate effect. So this is a H1, this is the header for the file. You have to have this header. It's a mandatory that you have the header, and I wanted to show you how I create H1 or the H1 headings. How do I create the headings? I usually do this by just having the hash symbol, and then I have heading 1 right here, and immediately you can see this is rendered, and you can see this is the result I get. So this is how you create a H1 heading. This is how you create a heading, the H1. Now I want you to see the difference between the H1 and the normal text. So this would be a normal text. So this would be a normal text. So this is how a normal text would look like. Now, I want to show you again the difference between the H1 and the H2 heading in Markdown. So let's go ahead to have the 2 hash symbols, which give me the heading 2, just like that. And you can see the difference between the H1 and the H2. And when I click on this, you can see these are 2 hashtags which are preceding, which are before the actual heading 2. And if I want to go ahead and also have the H3, which is the H3 heading, then the 3 hash symbols, create an H3 heading, and we do this by having this and then a space, and then I'm going to have heading 3, just like that. And you can see the difference between the H1, the H2, and the H3 headings. Now you can continue down like this up to the H6 heading, but this is the basic for the headings. This is the basic syntax that you need to master for the H1, H2, H3, H4. You can continue down the line having H4, H5, H6. That's how you create the headings with Markdown. Okay, the more the hash symbols you use, the smaller and deeper the heading is going to become. Okay, so a clean Markdown document usually has one main H1, as you can see right here, and then multiple H2 sections, which are these headings, H2 headings, then H3 subsections, just like you can see right here. So most of the time you're going to use H1, H2, and H3. For example, for my very basic project, I would have something like this. I would have the scheduler project as a H1, and then I would go ahead to have the overview as a H2. So overview right here, overview as a H2, and then I would go ahead to have the text tag as a H2 again, text tag as a H2. So I'm going to remove one hash right here, and I'm going to have this as a H2, and then I'm going to have the features also again as a H2 heading, features, and then again I'm going to have authentication now, authentication as a H3, and then now I'm going to have scheduling as a H3 again, and then I would have something like the AI caption generator as a H3 again, and then I would have the deployment as a H3 as a H2 right here. So deployment, just like that. This creates a structure. Now this This structure is extremely important for AI agents because when AI reads this file, it understands the hierarchy. It knows that authentication is part of the features, right? So you can see authentication is a H3 header, and this means this is a subsection of the section features, right? So it knows that deployment, as you can see right here, it knows that deployment is a separate section from the features section, as you can see. So headings are not just visual formatting, they actually create meaning. Next on, we move to paragraphs. Paragraph in Markdown are just normal text. So under this scheduler project, I can have something like this project. This project is a social. Well, as you can see, I've just created this small paragraph right here. To create a new paragraph, you just leave an empty line between blocks of text, just like that, and you can have your new paragraph initialized just like that. Okay, so this is the first paragraph and this is the second paragraph, right? Simple, no special syntax needed for paragraphs. And now we're going to go ahead and see how we can actually create bold and italic text. To make the text bold, I can have the text that I want to be bold encapsulated or enclosed by two asterisks on each side. Just like that, this text is now a bold text. As you can see there's a difference between this text right here and this text right here. And only when I click on the text can you see the two asterisks, but Markdown renders this as a bold text just like that. And you can see this is a different from the normal paragraph here, which is not in bold. You can see this text right here. This paragraph is actually bold. So that's how you create a bold text. To make the text italic, you only use one asterisk. So in this case, I use two asterisks that enclose the text. Now I can just remove, I'm going to remove one of these asterisks and then I'm going to have something like this. And now again, you can see that I have the paragraph being in italic, and only when I click onto the text can you see the asterisks. But because all files in Obsidian are usually rendered as Markdown files, you can see that this is being interpreted as an italic text when you enclose that text in just one asterisk on both sides. So the opening asterisk and the closing asterisk, and then you have your text in between. So any part of the text that you want to turn into an italic text, you can just enclose it with the one asterisk just like that. And you can see now, again, you can see this is italic compared to the rest of the other words. So this word now is italic. So that's how you create italic text, okay? And that kind of instruction is useful in the AI agent files. If you really know, if you work with agents, you know it is important. The agent sees emphasis with such kind of text. The human developer also sees emphasis, okay? That's the importance of the Markdown files, and that's the important thing when it comes to learning the Markdown syntax. And the next thing I want to show you is the bullet point. So let's have here something like Next.js. So I code in Next.js, and immediately you can see the Markdown format is rendered. That's why I was using Obsidian, because it shows you exactly how the syntax would make the text look like in an actual Markdown file. Okay, so we have a fast API, and then we have the PostgreSQL just like that. So if I write something like this and then Redis, you can see that immediately on entering this and going to the next line, I get this already formatted as a bullet point. So I can get out of this bullet point style by just clicking on the backspace, and immediately I go back to the normal text. But again, you can also do something very cool. You can also go ahead and nest these bullet points. So I can nest these bullet points. Again, I can just click on the enter and the tab to have this tabbed space right here, and then I can go ahead and define other important text tag under the backend. So I can have something like this again, just as nested bullet points. So you can do that very easily by again going ahead and just having something like this. Again, if I want to nest some bullet points under the Next.js, I just click on the tab, and then I have another set of text tag under the React, the Next.js backend tech. So you can do that very easily. You can just use the tab, and again, if I want to nest this again, I just click on the tab, and then I am going to nest again these bullet points, as simple as that. So bullet lists are one of the most useful parts of Markdown. Why? Because AI models understand lists very well. A messy paragraph is going to be harder to follow, but a well-nested bullet point and a well-listed paragraph that has these bullet points, that has these headers, is going to be easily understood by AI and is much cleaner. This is how you should write for AI agents. This is super important. Clear, structured, and specific instructions are best for your AI agent. Okay, so just learn the structure, learn how to make your content clean. You can see this is very clean. This context right here, if I give AI such a context, is going to do exactly what I want. You're sure that your model or your LLM is not going to hallucinate when it has such a structured instructions, when it has such clean instructions. Okay, so here is how numbered lists are created. You're going to start by having the number 1, and then having a dot, and then I just enter a space, and then I'm going to have my first item on the list, which is install dependencies, and then I'm going to just click on enter, and automatically, if I am creating a numbered list and I click on enter, the next line is automatically going to be incremented by the number 1. And so here I can have something like a setup the database dependencies, and here is how I create a numbered list. Now you can have multiple steps, and you can have something like that, and it's also advisable to have a space just after the subsection header. And just like this, you can see I have created a list, and then I'm going to have start the development, something like that, and I can just get out of the list by deleting that and just clicking on the backspace, and I'm out of the numbered list mode. But that's how we create a numbered list with MD files. So if I want this to appear as numbered list, I just have the number 1, and always remember to have a dot after your number, very important, and clicking on enter. And obviously you have to start with the number 1. So for example, this is a very well detailed list for the setup instructions. This is perfect for step-by-step instructions. Okay, so this is useful for humans, very useful, but it is more useful for AI agents because the steps are ordered. The agent is now going to execute your instructions in an order, and the agent knows exactly what is going to come first, second, third, and fourth. So what I want to talk about right now is the most underrated Markdown feature, and it's a feature that is used in almost all the agents that we use to code today. Talk about anti-gravity, talk about Codex, talk about open code, talk about cloud code. All these agents use this feature, and you can see it's this checkbox, and you can see if I click on this, it gets marked. How do you create such a checkbox? how do you create such a checklist? How do you create a list with boxes that you can check? I use these every day in my coding, and I have my agents lay out a tasks list in which they will execute the solution. They form a tasks list, and when they finish a task, the agent has to check the task. So how do we create such? Well, it's actually simpler than you think. So I'm going to delete all of these, and I want to create the first a checklist with you. So I'm going to have just a simple hyphen like that, and then I'm going to have a simple a pair of square brackets. And if you want this to be a checklist, if you want this to be a box that you can check, well, when you do this, it's not going to be a checkbox. So for you to make this a checkbox that is unchecked, you have to have a space just like that. And when you enter the space, and now you start writing your first task. So this is how I create the checks list, and then I'm going to create another one with you guys. So I'm going to have the simple hyphen, and I'm going to have the space, and then I'm going to have a pair of square brackets. Yeah, and inside the pair of square brackets, I need to have a space, and then I'm going to enter space just like that, so I can start writing what I want to start writing as one of my tasks. So I'm going to have add form validation. And what if I want to create a task that is already checked? So I'm going to close this, and then I'm going to have an X. And now if I start writing, I should have something like connect API endpoint, and you can see I'm now writing a task that has already been checked. So this is how you create the checklist. When a task is complete, you mark it just like this. So again, let's have another task that is going to be complete. So I'm going to have the hyphen, and then I'm going to have the pair of square brackets, and inside the pair of square brackets, if I want this to be just a regular checkbox that is not checked, I'm just going to have a space, and then I'm going to start writing. But if I want to have this task as checked, then this pair of square brackets does not need to have a space in between. Then I'm just going to write an X inside the pair of square brackets, and now when I start writing this task, this step should be checked. So display error messages just like that, and you can see I'm writing a checked box, I'm writing a checked step, and this is how you mark your task as complete. This is how you create a checklist. This is super excellent for AI workflows, and it's super useful. Actually, I'm going to show you a live case of how I use this for my anti-gravity agent every day. You can see every day I have my agent checking the faces and executing my tasks in a phase. And so my agent automatically creates this TASKS.md. As you can see, I have a TASKS.md file, and whenever my agent accomplishes a certain move, or it finishes a certain task, or it executes a certain step, I always tell my agent to make sure that it has marked the step and it knows where it is in the whole implementation plan. So this is very useful, and you're going to be using this every day. If you want to max out your development with these AI agents, then the best way you can do it is having your agent plan before execution. And once your agent plans, planning is not enough. After creating the implementation plan, make sure that your agent comes up with a tasks list, and the task list has to have check boxes, or has to have the checks list where it's going to be executing each step and marking a task once it's done as checked. So that's it for the checklist. Very useful again for your AI agents. So an AI agent can read the tasks list, understand what it has done, understand what is pending, and continue from there. This is where Markdown now starts becoming a project management tool. Well. Code blocks are critical in developer documentation, right? And also when creating instructions and you want to assign code examples to your agent. This is how you create a code block. You're going to have three backticks or triple backticks. So I'm going to have something like this, and then I'm going to specify a language, and then I'm going to have the console.log, the simplest code, hello world. And just like that, I have created a code block. Now when I enter out of this, when I get out of this and I just click outside the code block, you can see immediately the language is recognized and you can see the code block has been created. This is how the code block is going to look like when it is rendered, and that's why I decided to go with uh, um, Obsidian to show you these examples and this syntax with MD files, because you can see immediately with Obsidian the result is rendered as it should be rendered with the Markdown files. So this is how we declare and specify the code blocks and how we create the code blocks. Well, as you have seen, we specify the language immediately after the first set of triple backticks. So if this was another language, so if I'm going to have another code block right here and I want to write in Python, then I have to do something like this. And inside here, I'm going to have a function in Python, and then I'm going to have so this is going to be a code in Python, and this is how it's going to look like. Now when I go outside of this code block right here, I want to get out of this code block. So when I click, you can see the actual syntax, you can see the triple backticks, and then I immediately after the triple backticks, I don't even leave a line. Immediately after the first set of triple backticks, I specify the language that I want. This can be Bash, this can be Python, this can be JS, and these are the results you usually see when you chat with your models. So when you chat with your model with ChatGPT, like ChatGPT for example, Cloud, or another model, another LLM, this is what you usually get as a response. These are the code blocks that you usually copy and paste, and yeah, this is how the code blocks are created. This is how we create code blocks. So this is how it is rendered when you actually do this with the markdown files. You can see how easy it is to create such code blocks. You can see how easy it is to create such structures with the markdown. You know, this helps with syntax highlighting. Markdown supports many language labels such as JS, TypeScript, Python, Bash, HTML, CSS, JSON, SQL, Docker files, YAML, and all these types of languages you might think of. This is super important for AI agents because code blocks preserve formatting. Now, without code blocks, code can become messy and hard to understand. For example, this might be bad. So this might be bad. You know, your agent might not really understand what you're saying when you do something like this. So for example, right here, this is a bad instruction. This is a bad practice on how you should give your agent a very specific instructions regarding to your code base. It would actually be better when you do something like this, when you have the set of the triple backticks and you have the bash, and you can assign the instructions, you know, npm install. So now your agent is going to understand your instruct your command lines the way you want them. Your agent is going to understand the exact command it should run for the bash, you know, and something like this is actually going to be very effective for your model. Is going to be easier to understand, and it's also might be easier for a human to read. So the command is clear, the agent can identify, as you can see, the human can copy. This is the point. And we also have inline code. Inline code is created by using just one backtick. So you can have something like this. So you can have something like npm run dev. So you can see now this is an inline code block, and it's just declared, and we just write this with one backtick, with a set of backtick, just one backtick, so you enter the code between the set of one backtick, and it's very useful, and this is how it's usually rendered. Okay, I also use these code blocks multiple times when coding with my agent and when giving prompts to my agent. So these MD files and this MD syntax are also very useful when you're doing prompting with your agents, when you're giving your agent the right prompts. It's sometimes very, very, very important to give clear separations for your agent. For example, you might want your agent to analyze a code block. How do you assign the code block to your agent during prompting? Well, it's always nice, and it's always a very useful practice, especially for a prompt engineer, to have the clear separations. So you use this syntax when giving clear separations and having clear separations for your agent. Inline code is also great for file names, commands, variables, functions, and API routes. So this is how we create inline code blocks, and this is how we create the code blocks with MD notation. Links are created like this. So I'm going to have something inside here, open GitHub, and then I'm going to have the link in the second part. Sorry, this is actually a pair of parentheses. So I'm going to have https github.com, and then this is a link, and if I follow this link, I should be led to the GitHub website. I should be led to the GitHub landing page, and you can see this is how we actually create links. This is how we actually go ahead to have the links. This is how you specify a link. This is how you actually do it in MD, in Markdown. So the first part, as you can see, is just the text, and the second part is the URL. That's it for the links, as simple as that. So you can have a lot of useful links that you want to specify in your Markdown files, maybe for your fellow developers or for a developer or even for an agent. And now the project context is centralized. A good agent context file might say something like this. And with this, we have a centralized project. As you can see right here, these might be some useful links you might be using to point to your repositories if you want your agent to get more context or open your repository. You can see how we can use these links. And another thing that I want to discuss, almost close to links, is actually images. So I want to talk about images. So we have images just like that, and I want to talk about images. Images in Markdown look like links, but with an exclamation mark in front. So this is very close to links. So something like this, a dashboard screenshot, maybe, and you can have this image and refer to a path. You can see the images is not created yet, and you can have something like dashboard.png. You can see I don't have the image yet, but this is how you actually link an image. So I'm just going to quickly add an image to this images directory. So let me just add an image very quickly, and now you should see the image render. So you can see I've actually added the image to my images directory /images dashboard.png, and when I delete this, you can see immediately when I come back to my images, you can see the images dashboard.png is not found. But if I come again and I just have this image brought in right here immediately, and then I come back to my, I'm going to rename this to the dashboard. And now you see the link to my image is actually there. And now I have my image being rendered right here. So if I want to go ahead and delete the image, I can come ahead and just remove this link and see the magic that happens when I just remove the image, and you can see immediately the image, if I remove the link, immediately the image is gone. So the text inside the brackets is called the alt text. So this text right here is actually the alt text. The path inside the parentheses is now what points to the image. This is useful for documentation, very useful. So you can actually see how this can be used with your agent. You can attach screenshots. You can actually tell your agent which part are just show your image, the graphical image of what you want your agent to work on, or what you want your agent to edit. For AI agentic development, images are less directly useful than text, but they are still helpful for visual documentation, UI references, architecture diagrams, and screenshots. The next thing we're going to talk about are the tables in MD. We also happen to have the block quotes, and they are created using this right here, the greater than sign. So this is what is used to create the block quotes. And for example, I can have right here, good context creates good AI output. And I'm going to have just at the top right here, I'm going to have a paragraph, just a line, so that you can differentiate between the actual paragraph and a block quote. So I'm going to have this below is a block quote, and this and you can see, and also below here I want us to have another line. So this is the end of the file. So you can see how block quotes appear when they are in between, or they are sandwiched between lines or paragraphs. Block quotes are very useful for notes, warnings, and especially important principles. So for example, you can have something like inside the block quote, you can have something like, do not modify the payment logic without the full test suite. And I see this every time I work with my AI agents. When my agent is creating an implementation plan, I tell it to go ahead and give these instructions and these warnings, or which file should not be touched, or what the agent should not do. So the block quote is again very useful when going ahead to give very important instructions or warnings, or some things that should not be done within a specific implementation plan or within a specific step. Again, very useful. So next I want us to talk about the horizontal lines. So what are horizontal lines? So this is an example of a horizontal line, and I want you to see. So now you can see I have a horizontal line. And how have I created this? So let's have one liner here. This is one liner, and the next is line. So I can have a line, a horizontal line, by just having 3 hyphens. So having 3 hyphens, and when I click on enter, you can see how this is rendered in Markdown. That's the syntax for creating the horizontal line, and they are very useful when separating sections. As you can see, this is an example of how we can have a separation of the sections. Again, very useful, but don't overdo it. Clean structure is better than having decoration. Let us talk about how Markdown files are actually created. A Markdown file is just a normal text file, and it's just created by having the initials, and then it ends by a .md notation, and just like that you have your Markdown file. Now you can create one in VS Code, you can create one in Vim, you can create one in the terminal, and I'm not going to get into details about that, but it's so simple. It does not need a compiler. Super simple to get one rolled up, and it's super easy to work with. Then you save it, and that is it. That is it about the Markdown file. No compiler, no special app, no complex setup. Just a plain text, as simple as that. So we can have such a simple MD file and you can actually save it, and this can even be your README. So I'm going to rename this to the README file, and you can see with VS Code, it's not really like Obsidian where you get immediate rendering or you get the format, how it actually looks when you view this Markdown file. But yeah, that's how you create a Markdown file. You just create the file, no special setup, just save it, no compiler, no complex setup. It's just plain as you can see it. And that is exactly why these Markdown files are super powerful. It is portable, it is going to work everywhere. It can be read by humans, editors, websites, documentation tools, GitHub, and most so important, AI agents. Why Markdown matters for AI agents, and now let us connect this to AI agentic development. An AI agent is not just a chatbot, and this is where most people get it wrong. A chatbot is just simply meant to respond to messages. A chatbot task is very simple. A chatbot task is to respond to messages. That's it. You see, an agent can reason through this task. An agent uses tools. An agent reads files. An agent modifies the code. An agent calls your APIs. It runs commands and complete multi-step workflow. But for an agent to work well, obviously it needs context. And this is where a lot of developers mess it up. They open an AI tool and give very basic prompts and very vague instructions, something like just simple as build me a dashboard. And then they get angry when the AI makes bad assumptions. But the problem is not always the model. Sometimes the problem is in your context and the instructions that you feed to this AI. A better approach is to give the agent a markdown file with all the instructions that are needed. Now, when you have instructions like this in an MD file, obviously this is 10 times better. Why? Because now the AI, as you can see, has a goal, requirements, tech stack, rules, constraints, and definition of done. So even if you're vibe coding an app, this is the best way to feed instructions to your AI. This is the difference between random prompting and agentic development. In modern AI assisted development, you should start thinking about Markdown files as part of your code base architecture. Here are some of the most important Markdown files you're going to need when working with these agents, whether it comes to whether you're using Cloud Code, whether you're using Open Code, whether you're using any of these AI agents, whether you're using anti-gravity. These are some of the important Markdown files you should take note of. We have the README.md. As you know, this file, it is the front door of your project. It explains what your project is, how to install it, how to run it, how to use it, how to contribute. Well, beginners often trip here because they often assume that this readme.md is not really that important. But actually, if you're trying to explain or present your project to anyone, or you want anybody to check your repo, then it is a no-brainer to have this as the front door of your project. Next, we move on to the AGENTS.md. This is the big one for AI development related to tasks. An AGENTS.md file tells AI coding agents how to behave inside your repo. That file is basically a system prompt for your code base. It is the brutal truth. If your repo has no clear instructions, do not be surprised when your AI coding agent behaves randomly. Bad instructions create bad output. Next, we have the TASKS.md. This file tracks what needs to be done. And I usually have a TASK.md before actually allowing my agent to change anything in my code base. This gives an AI agent a sense of progress. It keeps track of what tasks have been done. It actually keeps track of the implementation plan and the solution that is being developed by the AI agent. It prevents your agent from hallucinating, and it always makes sure that your agent knows exactly where it is in the process of coming up with a solution or changing a certain part of the code or even creating a new structure or a new flow. It prevents you from explaining everything again and again. Super important, and I use it every single time. We have the SPEC.md file. This file contains what you're building in detail. For example, we have this file, and this helps humans, developers, and agents align with the same goal. And we have the ARCHITECTURE.md. These files help explain how your system works. This file is extremely useful for AI agents. Why? Because agents need to understand the system before they modify it. Without architecture context, they will make shallow changes. With architecture context, they make better decisions. And finally, the CHANGELOG.md. This helps humans and AI agents understand the history of the project. And we have Markdown as AI memory. Here is the deeper idea. Markdown can act like memory for your project, not memory like a database. Memory like shared understanding. For example, this is what OpenClaw uses under the hood for cron jobs to remember its personality, to remember what it should do on a daily basis. This is what gives personality to your agent, such as OpenClaw. Instead of keeping all project knowledge inside your head or scattered across random charts, you put it into Markdown files. That means your repo can explain itself. Your repo can tell the AI, this is what I am, this is how I work, these are my rules, these are my current tasks, these are my constraints, this is what good output looks like. That is powerful because in agentic development, the quality of your AI workflow depends on the quality of your context. Weak context, remember, gives you weak agent output. Strong context gives you stronger agentic output. So Markdown is not just text. Markdown becomes a bridge between human intent, project knowledge, AI agents, and code execution. This is why I say Markdown is becoming the language of AI agents, not because AI only understands Markdown, but because Markdown is one of the simplest formats for giving AI structured instructions. What I want you to take from this video is that Markdown is not just for README files anymore. Markdown is becoming one of the most useful formats in AI agentic development, AI assisted development, because it is simple, readable, structured, version controlled, easy to edit, easy for AI agents to pass, easy for humans to maintain. And if you're building with AI agents, you need to stop thinking only about prompts. You need to stop thinking only about prompts. Prompts are temporary, Markdown files are reusable, and even inside well-detailed and well-structured prompts, we use some of these Markdown syntax. Markdown files are usually reusable, prompts disappear inside chat history, right? Markdown files live inside your projects. Prompts are often messy. Markdown files can create clean project memory. So the next time you open a repo, do not ignore the MD files. As you can see, Markdown looks simple, but in the AI agentic era, simple structured context is exactly what you need for your agent, and it's exactly what makes your agent to be more powerful and more precise when it comes to delivering its duties or coding tasks as needed. If you enjoyed the content, you found this helpful and you found this educational, and you want to get more inspiring content based on AI, agentic development, and the future of AI, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. See you in the next one.